The IMC Podcast is here to motivate and excite you about reading the Bible while in your corner. With that said, we highly encourage you to draw your own conclusions based on your personal findings in the scriptures as you journey with us on our conversations of the individual biblical characters. The views expressed by the guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors or who they represent. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and keep going. Like, subscribe, and share.
The man did change, but there's a lot of qualities of the man that didn't change.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the IMC Podcast, where we explore different biblical characters with an attempt to better understand them and their stories. I'm Dee, and with me, my co-host Richard, and our special guest Hans. A little bit about him: he's the administrative pastor at Pioneer Memorial Church in Michigan. He's also studying at the Theological Seminary here at Andrews University. He's very passionate about leadership, fitness, and we're happy to have him on this episode. And as always, we're going to tackle another biblical character that, for me, one of my favorites growing up. You know, I probably said that a few times, but I love them all. But Richard, give us a little bit of teaser on the character we're going to tackle today.
Are you ready for today's character? All right. What if I told you in this time and in this life, in fact, we can move from the 0 state to 100% state? Not by our will, not by our might, but by the power of God. Listen, today's character, it's someone that his life began in a way that was unexpected, but also ended in a way that was unexpected, because he didn't let the past define him, but moving forward, he allowed God to use him and what he had to expand on evangelism, church planting, and essentially dying to flesh so that the will of God could go on.
Amen to that.
Yeah, man.
So before diving into some of the points that I want to make for Paul, I wanted to just cover real quick a brief synopsis or outlined timeline of Paul's life. We sometimes assume that the audience knows the character, right? But it's better not to assume and just giving at least a little bit of insight on the character. So there are very important dates on the life of the Apostle Paul. So let's start with a couple of them, and we'll give a little bit of perspective too. The Apostle Paul was born in the city of Tarsus within the Roman province of Sicilia. That would be modern-day Turkey today. And some of the scholars believe that he was born around year 2 AD. And to put that into perspective, that would be about 6 years after Christ was born.
Wow.
Experts also say that Christ must have been born around year 4 BC. So he was a little bit younger than Jesus. We do know that Paul was born out of an Israelite family, according to Philippians 3:5. He was born of the tribe of Benjamin. Actually, the first time in the Bible that we see Paul, we find this in Acts 7. And this is when Paul was witnessing the murder of Stephen. And we believe this happened in year 32 AD. So he was about 30 years old when he started ministry, if we can call it that, right? He's definitely his ministry, right?
Yeah.
A year later, in year 33, he was traveling to Damascus, which is where he met Jesus. He repented and converted. 3 years later, we know that he was for 3 years in Arabia. Paul journeys back to Damascus. We find in Galatians 1:17, following from the visitation to Jerusalem, which was his first time back after his conversion. We find in Acts 9:27 and Galatians 1:18-19. And then after that, we find his different missionary trips. We find that some experts say that he had 3 missionary trips, 4 missionary trips. Some say 5 missionary trips. I lean more to the 5th, to having 5 missionary trips, and then his final mission to Rome, which he still did mission work, of course. So we estimate that his first mission trip was happened between 44 and 46 AD, his second 49 to 52 AD, his third 53 to 58 AD, his fourth 60 to 63 AD, and his fifth and final mission 63 to 67, and then this is a more accurate date. In year 68, he was killed in Rome, which is where his mission ended.
Yeah.
Before you even go on, this sounds like a biography, right?
Yes.
It sounds like an everyday person, right? It sounds like a normal person.
Yeah.
So, look at Paul as not up here, but right here with you. Got it?
Okay, there we go. All right, so let's dive into the Bible. Let's go to the book of Acts. The book of Acts was written by the faithful Luke. Luke is also author of the book of Luke, where he writes about the life of Jesus, but he also writes on the book of Acts. He's the author, and we believe that he was a travel companion to Paul.
Right.
By the way that he writes about Paul, he may have looked at him as a man of influence. He may have even been, to a certain extent, his mentor. But they definitely had a close relationship, and it was based on Paul's accounts that Luke is able to write this book. So in Acts chapter 7, we see the very first time we see the name of Saul, which is Paul, not to be confused. We're going to learn what happened there. But in verse 58, it says, "And they cast him out of the city and stoned him." We're talking about Stephen, of course. He was one of the 7 deacons, probably the most outstanding deacons, and he was stoned for his faith. And the witness laid down their clothes at the feet of a young man named Saul. So he was Saul at the time, not Paul yet.
Yeah.
The name conversion comes a little bit later, and it's related to his conversion,
Right.
Presumably. But so a little bit of context of Saul. If Saul was alive today, he would have been educated in Harvard University.
Wow.
So he went to the school of the experts, the masters, the scholars, right?
Yeah.
And his most prominent mentor, Gamaliel, practically taught him since he was very little. And so Saul, at 30 years old, which is the age that we estimate he had at this time, he was a scholar, a theologian, and he was in a point in his career that he could say, as Galatians chapter 1 says, that for his age, he was way above any of those who were the same age that he was. So he was someone that was very, very much outstanding what he did.
So not only was he like an evangelist, he was also a book writer. He was a scholar.
If I'm not mistaken, he wrote 14 books of the New Testament. So yes, definitely. I mean, his theology definitely changed. When we're talking about Saul to Paul, right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, and that's actually one of the points that we are going to talk about. And so we find him in chapter 8 persecuting the church. Verse 3 says that he made havoc of the church. In other words, destruction of the church. He was entering every house and dragging off men and women, committing them to prison. Or killing them. And in going to chapter 9, we see that he wants to go to Damascus to do the same thing, right? He was about the law and enforcing the law, and he gets commissioned by the high priest to be able to do this. And in verse 3 of chapter 9, we see that he journeys to Damascus, and then he meets himself with Jesus. And Jesus says, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" So here's where we find the conversion of Saul. And we can say this way, right, from Saul to Paul. And during this conversion, he's blinded momentarily, even though later on he says that it's an issue that he always struggled with. So we believe that his sight returned, but not to the perfection that he was prior to that.
2 Corinthians, he talks about him begging for the Lord to take a thorn out of his flesh, which we can see he was referring to that lack of sight, or like eye weakness, something like that.
Correct. That's right. So Jesus asked him the question, "Why are you persecuting me?" And at this time, we believe that Saul was convicted that he was doing what's right. Right? This was a man who thought that he was living a righteous life, and what he was doing, he did it for the glory of God.
Right.
So when we talk about Saul to Paul, the man did change, but there's a lot of qualities of the man that didn't change. His theology definitely changed.
Yeah.
His understanding of Jesus and the understanding of the mission definitely changed, right? Those things changed. And let's move. Actually, if we go to chapter 13, this is the first instance that we see him being called Paul. In chapter 14 and verse 9, it says, "Then Saul, who is also called Paul." So we may not know exactly when the name change happened.
Okay.
But presumably, in the Old Testament, we see many instances where God has a mission and he changes the name, right? We see Jacob going to Israel, and we see Abraham becoming Abraham, and Sarai becoming Sarah. So there's a concept here that God says a name identifies who you are, right? And he says, well, you are no longer who you were before. So God says, let's change your name, right? So presumably this is what happened with Saul to Paul in the New Testament. So I don't know if you guys have ever looked up what your name means. Sometimes out of curiosity, it's like, well, did my parents name me correctly according to what I do in life and what I intend to?
I think my parents didn't know mine, but I think they were right.
So innocently or as a casualty, they ended up being correct. And then once Paul was converted, he had 3 years that he went let's put it this way, he went into the seminary, right? And then he came out of that, and we see the post life. So at a macro level, we can divide Paul's life into 3 periods, right? The before, or the Saul era, the after, or the Paul era, and then the 3 years that he had in between, which is actually very important to be able to. It's an important transition to be able to go into the second aspect of it. So in the first part of his life, when we see Saul, we see a man who may have had the wrong theology, but the Bible tells us that he was intense in what he believed. He was convicted. He was intense, and with such passion, he would do what he thought was right. And it's interesting because those same characteristics or qualities were the ones that he had when he became Paul, or when he became converted, right? So there are certain characteristics that he already had in the past that God said, this man is useful for me. And so I want to ask you guys, do you guys feel that prior to coming to the seminary, or prior to conversion, or whatever that point in time that marks the before and after, do you feel that you had characteristics, skills, it could have been your prior career, that it's going to help you with what's the after, right? Do you guys feel like you guys have some skills or characteristics that you guys can talk about?
You want to go for it?
You go for it.
For those who know, or for people that don't know, I came actually from a fine arts background, so graphic design, photography, and all that. And to be honest, going to the seminary was not part of the plan for me personally. But I feel like with the trajectory of my life, it was just clear when I was in undergrad that I need to be in seminary for some reason. God just impressed my heart that I had to come here for some reason. I didn't know what that was, but I had to come here. And I'm here. I'm already in my second year, and I'm like, man, God was like I understand now why God wanted me to be here. First and foremost, I think the biggest part was the connections, the people that, I established friendships with, right? That's going to last for a lifetime. And so I came from a place where, another thing too, where I liked a lot of community, right? And coming here, God revealed to me that community is huge. Like, it's very important. And I think that's one of the layers that God revealed to me coming here. In regards to my skill set, I do think that God has something in store for me, that he's not going to put away what I've learned the past 4 years, but he has a plan for that. I don't know what it looks like, but I do know that he is good and that he's going to bridge that gap somehow. So yeah.
Amen. All right, Richard, you're on the spot, man.
Oh man, I hate being put on the spot. So guys, I'm not gonna say anything. Well, I think for me, again, I also came from an art background, but I think with all the skills that I had, recently I was having a conversation with someone, and he said, and I was talking about my conversion experience and even how I got into seminary. And he said, God knows why he took you that route. And I was thinking, wow, that's true. Because when you think in the process of making an artwork, I make a lot of portrait drawings. And when you see the process that goes into it, how you start with an empty blank sheet to a fully made portrait, it makes me understand creation. It makes me understand what God does with me every day and not give up on me.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm the type of person, when I start a piece of work, I put my 100% in it. When something goes wrong, and Indeed knows this, when something goes wrong, I don't mind starting it over. I'll do it again, saying I don't give up. Whatever thing I'm doing. And I think when I began to see things that way, and when I came into seminary, or even truly accepting who God is, it gives me, like, I understand why God would take me that route, or why he would just allow me to do that, and then just all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's time, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's really good. I would say that Paul might say that you have some of the characteristics that he had. So, that's good. From my end, if you don't mind, if I share a little.
Oh, yeah,
bit,
go for it.
I think that based on my experience, nothing happens out of coincidence, right? It's not unintended, or it's not a waste. But everything that happens in your life, God can utilize it all for His cause, right? Yeah. And from my end, there was a time where I never expected to become a pastor, and I was doing well. I just came back home from the military, and I started a career in finance. So I was going to get my undergrad, and then after I graduated, I started working corporate, and I had supposedly, maybe moreover in human terms, or in the mentality that humanity has, I had a great future set before me. Right? Yeah. It was good benefits, good pay, good career growth. Yeah. And then I do remember the time that I told my vice president that I was leaving that world to go into pastoral ministry, and it didn't fit in his mind why someone would leave such a successful career to go into ministry.
How many times did you have to explain it to him?
Actually, it's funny because we were on the phone. I called him. We were on the phone for about 30 minutes, and he thought I was joking.
Wow.
Until he finally turned and he said, wait a second, you serious? Yeah. But that helps me understand that there's something about going to ministry that it's not for anyone else to understand. It's for you to understand, right? It's your calling, and no one's being called to understand your calling. You're being called, and sometimes we don't even understand it, right? So we can't even think about other people trying to understand that, right?
Can I confess?
Yeah.
I still don't know.
Come on now. Yeah.
Well, if you don't now, it'll come to you sooner or later. But so in terms of skill that we can see, again, going back to Paul, we saw that he had some skills or some characteristics that he had that he was able to transfer into his ministry, right? Currently, and I'll keep it brief, but currently I feel that my skill that I was able to do that has been administration. Because, I was an administrator, and I got called into ministry. I came to the seminary, and a year after, I got called into an administrative role at the church, to become pastor for administration. Right. And that's definitely a skill that it was transferable. And I'm feeling like I am making a difference in the church because of those skills. So I could look back, and sometimes I say to my wife, man, I'm a 30-year-old man, and I'm over here in seminary with these 20-year-olds, but we can't look at it that way, right? We can't compare people's careers or timelines, because everyone's on a different path. But the most important thing for us to know is that our path is set out to be the perfect path for us, right? It's not about how old are you when you're doing this, or at this age if you're doing this or that. It's about knowing, okay, is this where God wants me to be? And I think that's exactly what Paul probably asked himself after what happened on the road to Damascus. Is this where God is leading me to be? And based on what we see after that, I think the answer to that was yes, effectively, right? So then we come to this point where the before came, and I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about your conversion experience. That would probably be a really deep topic.
I think I actually have a question though. So with that, the transferable skills, right? Each time people talk about the early life of Paul, let's say Saul, they say, well, he was a terrible guy, right? This guy is killing people. But then let's look at it from the perspective or the angle of his intentions. Because whatever he was doing at that time was justifiable. So I want to ask the question, are intentions alone, or the fact that we have the intention, we could just go ahead and do it with any approach?
That's a deep question. It's interesting because God does say, this man is useful for me. Right? So there's something that God saw about Saul, right, that he said, these are the tools that I need, right? This is an instrument that I'm going to need for the future. So while we understand that Paul definitely wasn't perfect, we do note that God himself admits that there's something good about Paul that he can utilize for his ministry. Now, when it comes to intentions, it gets tricky, right? Because sometimes we intend to be good, right? Sometimes when we mess up and ask for forgiveness, it's like that wasn't my intention, but I mean, you still did it, so I think that if we were to put ourselves in his shoes, what he did was justifiable. What he did was even admirable for some, but that doesn't make it correct, right? That doesn't make it right. Which is why we say that from Saul to Paul, there's a theology change that needs to occur, right? Because again, before, his mission became to stop the full spread of Christianity, right? And then after, when he gets converted, his sole purpose becomes to spread Christianity, right? So so in a sense, his mission was similar, but in a sense, obviously, was different, right? So I think that there's transfer of skills, transfer of mentality, transfer of purpose, even. But the man himself, there was some change that needed to. I mean, there was a change in his heart that needed to occur, and that's a change that we all need to take up on us. But I think when it comes to intention, it becomes tricky. But regardless of what happened, I don't think that it makes it right. Right? I mean, he was persecuting people. He was obviously killing people. He's the one who essentially endorsed the murder of Stephen. And none of that becomes justifiable, right?
He was not on club, by the way.
That's right. So I don't know if that helps to answer your question.
It does.
It is a very interesting question. I don't know if I've heard that one before. But
I there's something that I like to share my conversion story, maybe at the end though, as we close. But there was something that you mentioned about Saul studying for like the 3 years, right? We can call it his like seminarian, journey or whatever. What's the significance of that? Because he had this encounter with Jesus, and he could have had just straight up just go and preached and etc. Right? But God was like, no, I need you to sit down for 3 years, study the scriptures, right? Do you see something in there? What's the significance of all that?
Sure thing. So let me tell you a quick story. I came to a seminary last year, right, for the fall semester in 2023. And as soon as I got here, I emailed every conference in the NAD, and I was so intense about trying to get sponsored.
Yeah.
And trying to get hired. And I know I spoke to one of the conferences, and they were looking into, based on my background, it was going to be a treasurer/pastoral role. Well, to make the story short, I was very, very focused on trying to either go out in the field already, start pastoring, or essentially just move out of this period and go straight to it. Similar to what you're saying, why didn't Paul just jump straight to it?
Yeah.
And God had to slow me down. And in fact, last year became one of the hardest years that I had in my life, for various reasons. But the main reason was because I could have gone out to pastor a church, but I would have probably destroyed that church. Because it's not about when you meet Jesus and when he calls you. It's about understanding when you're ready to do the things that God has for you. Right? I mean, today, if I'm an unbeliever, today I could believe, but that doesn't mean I know everything about Jesus. That doesn't mean I know Jesus. Right. I'm just understanding what it means to walk the path of Christianity, right?
Yeah.
And so when we say that Paul was going through this seminary period, right? It's interesting because give or take 3 years is about what seminarians are here.
Yeah.
But he had met Jesus. He had encountered Jesus. He had believed. But the all saw needed to be put in the ground. Right?
Yeah.
And the new Paul needed to be born in order for him to do what he did later on.
Yeah.
Without those 3 years, I am bold enough to say that he would not have been able to accomplish the give or take 35 years of ministry that he did post those 3 years.
Yeah.
So then the question for us, I guess there's many questions that we can ask on this. But what are you going through that you feel that God is molding, teaching, in order for you to be able to go out there and do the things that you've been called to do today?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're in this white space, this idle time, where it may feel that we're not doing much, being in the seminary, but I mean, do we believe that this is a critical time for us to go through and sort of slow down and say, well, God, this 1 year, 2 years, 3 years that I have left here, do what you will, so I may be able to do what you want me to do after that.
Right.
So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I agree. I feel like right now, especially my first year, I was thinking, man, I'm cruising. Like, I'm just like, man, let's get this done, But I feel like I had to really, sit down and really think and just check my mindset, because I think the best, I would say, if to get the most out of this experience, right? 3 years, 2.5, give or take, here at seminary, it's all going to be my mindset. It has to be healthy. It has to be positive, optimistic. Obviously, there's going to be highs and lows, but I feel like if I have those 3 things, right, I feel like I'm going to get the most out of this experience. But my first year, I was like, I don't know why I need to be here. It's like, I know I have to be here, but I'm like, man, I just want to get through it, I think it's all about mindset, honestly. Once that's in check, it's healthy, then I think, I know personally, it just makes it worthwhile. It's like, man, and I'm sure once I graduate, I'll be like, man, I want to stay here a little bit more, So yeah, mindset.
And I think when you think about any regular job, when you get hired, it's either they give you orientation and then you start the job. But I was thinking of it in terms of the military, right? When you go into the military, you go for boot camp, and for some time you're away from the civilian world to get your mind retrained or reprogrammed in a way where, and also, again, in the military, when you go to war, the soldiers that are captured, some of them, even though are in prison, they put some in re-education program so that they train your mind in a way where you don't have the same tactics or techniques that you used to have on the unit that you used to be on or the country that you used to fight for. So when I look at it that way, I'm like, for us to be effective, we really need to take the time to sit down, relax, and then just trust the process. Learn what God is doing through us so that when we get out there, whatever comes our way. Because I remember when I was coming, I told some of my mentors, they're like, oh, then you need to start connecting with people, which is good. Like, try to get other pastors involved.
Yeah.
Get as many programs as you can get. But there was this one mentor that he said, when you're giving something, a program, an event, and you're not ready, don't do it because you want to secure the future, because you don't know. Take your time to be a student right now. Because the work that we do, in the long run, we're going to be students. So if we don't know how to be students right now, are we going to be students when we get out there?
We need to be long life students, huh?
Long life students.
Man, no, I really appreciate the military concept. That actually, I think, hit it right in the head.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in the military in boot camp, you have 3 months there. In the first month, they break you in order to get rid of your bad habits or old habits. The second month, they start building. The third month, they reinforce it. Right. So I was just what thought came through my mind was last year again when I'm telling you that it was one of the hardest years of my life. It was like God broke me.
Me too.
I mean, like it was like every week that I was telling my wife I need to drop classes. Like I can't. Like there were so many things aside from classes. I mean, there were so many things going on in life, and sometimes that's the way that it has to go, right?
Yeah.
And I presumably Paul had a similar experience. To that. So we have this conversion period, this 3-year period. And then, the after that he went on to do his ministry. So I want to ask, though, I mean, we've talked about that before. We've talked a little bit about the in-between, and I think you want to mention a little bit more about your conversion here shortly. What's the after for you guys? What are you guys aspiring? What are you guys preparing yourself for? What do you feel that God has called you to do?
Yeah.
That's the scariest part.
It is scary. It's the unknown, right? You don't know it. It's not. There's no certainty. My conversions experience. So I grew up in a pastoral family. My dad, he's still serving. My mom is an educator, and they did an amazing job in just giving a healthy portrait of who God is, right? And so growing up, I had this healthy view of God, that he loves me. But at the same time, though, I did see God as like a teddy bear. It's like it gives me comfort, but I can do what I want.
Never heard that one.
And so that's where I struggled. I knew God loved me, but sometimes where it was time to be serious, I wasn't. I was like all joking around. He had to humble me. It was a gradual thing. I also, with that, I also struggled with an addiction. Actually pornography. So I was struggling with lust of the eyes. And I think that came from me seeing God as like a teddy bear. Although I had this healthy view of God that he's good, but God had to humble me. It's like. And it was a gradual thing. It wasn't like this, like Paul. But it took me years. I saw it. My addiction. I saw it as like popcorn, like candy. It's like a guilty pleasure. I know it's not healthy, but I could indulge. A few times, right? But it took me a minute. It took me a moment where God tell me, like, if you go on that path, then at some point I'm gonna have to leave because I respect you so much that I can't let this happen, right? So this will be a time where I'm gonna have to leave. And I was like, ooh. I was like, wow. And in that instance, I was like, okay, God, I commit my life to you. It's gonna be a struggle, but please help me, so I can get through it. And he did. He did. I was in 2022 was when I cut pornography off. And went 2024, so that's 2 years by God's grace. And And throughout that time, when I was still struggling, I had this, God impressed my heart to go to seminary. And that was doing undergrad. And that was my struggle. I was like, God, I'm struggling with this addiction, but you're calling me to go to seminary. I don't get it. It's like, in my mind, I was like, man, only like the holiest people are going to the seminary, right? So I was like, you know what? Okay, God, help me through this addiction. And I'm sure I'm going to see the fruit. And I'll go. And he said, okay, deal. And so, he held me through it all. One of the I guess, things that really helped me was to get in shape, exercising. That really helped me to cut it off. But once junior year was when I was like, okay, when I cut it off, I decided to go to seminary. I talked to my parents about it. My dad also planted the seed of pastoral ministry. So it wasn't just like, oh, let me go to pastoral ministry. Like, it wasn't a random thing. He planted that seed. God watered it. And when I was like, okay, I'm going to go, I came, and by faith, I'm here. I don't know what the future looks like. I am scared, like Richard talked about, because I don't know what the future holds. And one of my fears is the unknown. And so, but because I know that God is with me, he's been with me through the addiction. He's been with me prior to that. Just the testimonies that my parents have, going through what they've gone through during their childhood. I was like, man, God is so good. He's going to be with me. And so even though I'm struggling with, like, another thing too is, like, I like to be in control as well. So, but God is, like you said, here being the seminary, God is breaking me. He's breaking me, and I'm just moving by faith at this point. God has everything in his hands. So, yeah.
Amen to that, man. That's good. Richard, what do you want to share?
That's deep.
Hard to match, huh?
Man, I can have a similar experience, but I didn't grow up in a pastoral home or anything like that. But I think growing up, it was more. I was raised in the church. I was raised by my grandparents, and everything I did was for the glory of God. I wouldn't say a good kid. That's what people saw, but I hope I had my own secret life. Double standards. But the thing that I think I found with me, maybe in Saul or Paul, is that I wanted to do things my own way. Right, so yes, Lord, I want to help. Yes, I want to go to church. I want to do things that every Christian does. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it how I know how to do it. So for me, I love art. I like to make art. I like to do things, media or that. So I said, God, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make money doing media ministry. Pursuing media and art, and I'll use that to help the church. So like currently, I'm like communications for my church, and I'm like, oh, it's going good because our media ministry is growing, right? But then at the same time, inside me, there's this other person who nobody knows, right? Except the people that I've shared my story with, right? You don't know, oh, this guy was good, but there's something that I don't even know that person. I feel it. And each time I get a sense of that person, synopsis of that person, right? I'm a person that, well, I struggle with addiction. That's one of the things, but mine is to the point where I can easily get addicted to anything. Well, I haven't drunk or done anything like that, but when I get addicted to something, I don't stop. So let's say pornography, or maybe staying on social media for a long time. I won't stop. It's just that part of me.
Yeah.
Well, people don't really know that, because on the outside, I'm doing everything good. I'm able to put on the Christian character persona or something like that. So, but the conversion came when God is saying, well, you've done it your way. You've been trying, but I know what you can do. I know what you have. Just let me take care of you. Let me take you through the next, right? And man, I think I shared this with D. There was one time where I was there. I think I have a lot in common with Paul. So there was one time in the night where I was there sleeping, and I could hear this audible voice. Listen, I don't believe in when people say, "Oh, I heard the voice of Jesus." I seen him. I don't believe in that. But I found myself struggling, talking to someone back and forth. It got to a point where I went outside of my room, and I was sleeping at the living hall, so I went outside to check if there was someone outside. All my siblings are sleeping, my mom is sleeping, and there's no one there. But as loud as I could hear, right? And before I heard the last voice, I was laid down flat in my room. I couldn't move. And the voice said, "Just go, I'll take care of you." And prior to that, we were having conversations about working for God and becoming a pastor, going into ministry. Because growing up, people would see me and be like, "Oh." It wasn't like, "Oh, you're a good kid." It was like, "You're going to be a pastor one day. You're going to be doing ministry one day." I think at some point, one of my mentors looked at me and he said, "If I had money, I will put you into college for theology right after high school." I was like, "No, not me." Even though people could see that, I was holding back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because I knew the other person that was in me, and I knew I just wanted to do it my way. Right. But yeah, it was just one of those one-on-one encounters. But what the future holds, I don't know. One of the things that the conversion taught me is to learn to trust God and see how He's able to take you through the day.
Yeah.
And the promise hasn't failed.
Yeah.
That's really good. So then, if you have someone that's going through similar experiences that you guys have been going through, and that I can relate to some of the things that we've said. What are some of the advices or suggestions that you can give to those individuals who are living I guess there's two different areas, right? The number one, they're struggling with that process of conversion, of accepting God and fully trusting in Him, and then those other ones who have already experienced that.
Yeah.
But they're living in that white space, as we call it, right? They're living that seminary phase where they're trying to prepare themselves for whatever God may have called. It might not necessarily have to be in pastoral ministry. You can receive a calling in any field or any area, but they're in that white space where they're preparing themselves for what's coming, and they're trying to go through those experiences, but are also a little bit scared of the unknown, what's to come. So, what are some of the things that you guys could share that would make them feel a little more encouraged?
I think I'll go because I think when is it Ananias?
Ananias, yeah.
When God told him to go to Paul, his way of seeing the conversion was, well, God is not possible. But this is the guy that has killed.
Like, do you know who you're talking about?
Who you're talking about?
I don't want to die.
Right? And the sad part is, for some of us, we see people saying those things about us, and we let that discourage us. Because the people saying that, they think they know the future of where we're going to be next or what we're going to do next. Right? And so they're telling God what to do with us now that we've been converted. And sometimes when we get exposed to some of those sayings or people like that, we're like, okay, even him doesn't like me, right? We look up to people with higher standards, people that are already there, and they're telling us, boy, you're a mess. You don't bring that mess in here, right? And we're like, yeah, he looks down on me. We let that discourage us. I think one of the things that comes with conversion is we have to trust and know that the one that converted us is the only voice we need to listen to.
Yeah.
We have to learn to filter. Because whatever is coming next, again, we don't know. But we have to trust God that he knows. And he brings those people along because he is the one that's bringing them along for a reason. So they're not coming as a discouragement, but that's part of the process. You know, so what people say is after our conversion, while we're waiting for God to use us, while we're preparing ourselves, we have to look out that people are going to talk. They're going to say stuff about our conversion. But we have to know that the only voice in the case is that of Christ.
Yeah, and I also want to add a few things. For those listening or watching that's in their Saul era, you know, they're looking forward to that encounter with God, you know, I would say to just trust in God's timetable. You know, you don't know when that's going to happen. And sometimes when we read, you know, amazing stories like Paul with his encounter with Jesus, it's a big encounter, right? And sometimes we're trying to have that same encounter as well. But I would just highlight that sometimes encounters could be big, it could also be small, right? And so I would just encourage you guys to pray to God that to open your eyes, because sometimes he might reveal himself to you in the small things, not always in the big things, right? And so, and also God will use other people as well. And so I would also encourage you to have an open ear, you know, and just listen. I'm not saying to, you know, take in everything, right? But as you listen, you know, filter things out, you know, if it doesn't apply to you. But just take that into consideration, right? You know, pray to God so that he can open your eyes and also have an open ear, and God will work, you know, and you will have that encounter. And then after that encounter, you will have this confidence that whatever he's calling you to do, he has your back. He's gonna go, he's gonna be right beside you as you journey, right? So that's my encouragement to those that's, you know, watching or listening. Yeah.
Man, last one. What if we're talking to someone that has felt the impression of a calling into ministry, but are yet to make the decision to go to seminary, for example?
Yeah.
What would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we were all there once, right?
Yes. I have to be real, right? I have to be real. It's hard because, like Richard said, like sometimes there's things that we want to do, like we want to do things our own way, and sometimes we just want to put a stop on something that God has for us. But I would say that if he's calling you to do that very thing, it's easier said than done, but I would say go for it, you know. I don't believe that God, for instance, I could have gone to theology after undergrad, but that wasn't my path. You know, I went to fine arts. That was my path, and God made a way for me to come to the seminary at some point. So I would say that, and another thing that comes to mind in the other episode, shout out to Francois, he talked about, you know, work with what you have, you know, and start where you are. So if God is calling you somewhere, just start, just work with what you have and start where you are, right? And so just build upon that. You know, sometimes it is overwhelming to hear what God has for you, and you're like, how is that gonna happen, right? And I would just sit still and be like, okay, if he's calling me there, let me do baby steps to get there, right? And so it can be overwhelming, but just start with baby steps and get the momentum going. That's what I would say. But I would say go for it, because you don't want to waste time. God has a meaning with everything. So sometimes 2 years could be huge for you in that journey, but you didn't want to do it, you know. So I would say just go for it.
Well, I'm gonna say the word again. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary, but one of the things that I think I know is it hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
And that choice is not easy to make.
Yeah.
But I think in making the decision, the question is, do you want life or do you want death? Which is? Do you want to keep living in the glory of God? Or you're comfortable with the life you have right now? The thing is, Saul was very comfortable with what he was doing. He was given the confirmations, the go ahead and all that. But God pushed him to the next level. Right? He pushed him to a point where he couldn't be comfortable no more. Because let me give you the picture. Coming to seminary, making that decision, you think, oh, God has called me. Everything is going to be smooth. It's going to be nice. Trust me, I'm not going to lie to you. One thing you should keep in mind, that there's no promise that says the journey is going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But there's a promise that says that he's going to take us through. Right, so in making your decision, choosing to come to seminary, baby steps.
Yeah.
Necessary. But while you're choosing, just keep in mind that there are going to be happy days.
Yeah, highs and lows, you know?
The highs and lows. But choose life. Choose life, which is choose to live in the glory of God every day. So you coming to seminary is definitely not the last stop, or it's not something that you need to force yourself to do. But if that's what God is calling you to, look straight ahead. Don't listen to the side talks. Don't listen to the right, the left.
Yeah.
Just keep walking straight.
Yeah.
So if it's seminary and the calling is so strong, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
And you choosing to come to seminary, you're not wasting money. You're not wasting time. But you have to keep in mind that it's for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy.
That's right. I would like to add, though, that God is persistent.
Talk about it, man. Sometimes it's like a mosquito, right? It's like, man.
I mean, I was called for 7 years until I finally said, all right, but God's persistent, and sooner or later we're gonna have to choose, right? And at least the hope that I would have for any individual who has received the calling, and the decision is pending, that when you choose the route, the path, the purpose that God has given to you, it cannot go any better. God knows us more than we could ever imagine, and more than we could ever even know ourselves.
Yeah.
So why not trust Him?
Yeah.
He just knows it, right? He knows what's going to satisfy us. He knows what's going to fulfill us.
Yeah.
And He knows exactly what's going to bring purpose to our lives. And what's the most dangerous man in the world? A man with a purpose, right? So that's powerful too. We can walk this earth walking purposely, or purposeless, but it's better to walk purposely.
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of the calling too. If God's calling us to do something, it's not just because it's not that He needs someone, but it's a complementary match between the need and the want, right? It's because He doesn't only need you, but He wants you to be there because He knows what's best for you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's an important factor to incorporate into this whole conversation.
Yeah.
I know. I think for some of us too, I think when you look at it, the only way that we can be saved is through ministry. God calls us into a specific ministry.
Yeah.
Not so that we can reach other people, but so that we can also be saved, like personally.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, God wants to use, or he just wants to use you like a screwdriver and then just dump you out to, the tree somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's because that place is the best place, the right timing, and he knows that you doing something else.
Yeah.
It's probably going to hurt you, and God doesn't want to see us hurt. So,
That's really good. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that there's plenty more that we can learn from the life of Paul. I don't know if you guys do comments, but maybe we can get some more feedback and some more thoughts on the life of Paul via comments.
Guys, you took my job.
There we go.
Yeah, we're gonna bring it back, Hans. We're gonna bring it back.
All right. Any last words? So
for last words, like we were saying, there's a lot that we can learn from the life of Paul.
Yeah.
There's also a lot that we can learn from our own lives.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say if you have a testimony out there that you're dying to share, or maybe you're not dying to share, but if you have a testimony, share with others, because I can surely learn from the testimony of my brothers here, and it's empowering, it's inspiring, it's motivating, and that exact thing that you guys are doing with your testimonies is what you can do with your testimony. So share it with us, and it's definitely be sure to influence and inspire others.
Amen.
Well,
Amen.
You heard it.
Yeah.
Get out of that corner again. Get out. Get out. All right. Till we meet again. I'm Richard. This is D, and this is lovely brother Hans. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
See ya. Peace.